Welcome to Banking Transformed, the top podcast in retail banking. I'm your host, Jim Marous. According to Avanade's latest AI Value Report, 59% of financial institutions have already embarked on an AI transformation journey, with a third claiming completion. Yet, beyond this enthusiasm lies a complex reality. Many banks expect quick returns while still building fundamental capabilities in data management, security, and infrastructure. Joining me on the Banking Transformed podcast are Jeromey Farmer, Head of Data and AI for North America at Avanade, and Daragh Morrissey, Director of Artificial Intelligence for Worldwide Financial Services at Microsoft. Together, we'll unpack the report's findings, explore real-world AI use cases delivering value now, examine implementation opportunities and challenges, and look ahead to what's next, including the transformative power of agentic AI. While banks are enthusiastic about AI's potential, success requires taking a strategic approach to AI implementation, starting with clear business objectives, kind of like your North Star, addressing data foundations, building the right skill sets internally or through partnerships, and establishing the proper governance frameworks. So, Jeromey, before we start, can you give us a little bit of a background around your career path and what you do at Avanade?
So my career has actually come through both an academic sense and through industry, right? So I spent most of through the time of when data science first started becoming a thing in the manufacturing space, actually, really working on factory floor optimization, working at waste reduction efforts. Phenomenal place to get lots and lots of data at almost near real time, right? Which is what we're trying to do. And then as I progressed through my career, I've kind of gotten more into how do we actually do this and do this well at scale? Because it sounds great, but now in this new world with this massive amounts of data, with all the tools we have, we can't just go take it all and implement it and expect it to work at scale. So we have to focus on the right strategies. So I've shifted more with Avanade and figuring out how do I partner with organizations to actually understand what the true business problems are, and how do we look at it from a capabilities lens. So that way we can then step into the technology and the reference architecture, design something that we can scale while keeping the right kind of North Star around kind of governance, talking about quality data, talking about how we do things with making sure our customers and our constituents are safe and guarded for. And so I've kind of moved into this world now within Avanade, supporting them build solutions that actually drive business value. And that's where my fun has been, because I had also as a professor at Washington University in St. Louis, I have my academic research, right, where we're actually trying to figure out how do we use AI to do things like early onset dementia analysis with computer imaging. So it's this great blend for me where it's theory and applied, and actually making it where we can drive action with the business.
So, Daragh, before we start on your side, if you can give us a little bit of background, you're not a newcomer to our podcast, but if you can give us a little bit about your background and what your role is at Microsoft.
Sure thing. And thanks again for having me on, Jim. I loved the last conversation we had, and I'm Irish and I'm going to talk a lot. And there's another person on this, so I want you to tell me to shut up if I'm talking too much. So yeah, I'm very lucky in my role. I get to work at Microsoft. I work in the Worldwide Financial Services team. So we work with our most strategic customers, our engineering teams. And I also kind of put the pieces in place for all of our financial services sellers, bringing the best partners to them, making sure that we're making the best cloud we can for this industry, making sure that we're doing everything to help them stay in compliance. So I'm very lucky, and I'm right in the center of all the things that are happening with AI. And it's just been, even since last year, it's been incredible what's happened.
Okay, so let's get back to you, Jeromey. You just came out with some new research at Avanade, and the research shows that 65% of mid-market banks expect ROI from AI within 3 to 12 months. Based on your work with banking clients, Are these expectations realistic? And what quick wins have you seen banks actually achieve in that amount of time frame?
Yeah, but I'm going to call out there for targeted use cases with that clear scope, clean data, and that business alignment that we were talking about a little bit earlier. While these large scale AI transformations take time, we've seen real measurable ROI in 3 to 12 months with banks who pursue these quick win, agentic kind of or traditional AI initiatives. And we've seen them where they've been more operationally focused, customer centric, and data ready. And a couple of key wins that we've seen, first and foremost, are contact center and conversational AI co-pilots, right? So, we've had pilots of Microsoft Teams, Genesis Twilio, where they surface real-time suggestions, retrieve customer data, auto summarize the calls. It drives a 10 to 20% reduction in our average handle time, which improves NPS and lowers our call escalations. So this agentic evolution adds proactively agent flagging anomalies of mid-call for follow-up or via email automatically. So it's helping in that process. Another quick one that I've seen a lot of is around automated customer onboarding agents. And to be honest with you, this is beyond just financial services. I'm seeing this in a lot of different areas around supplier onboarding as well. So what we have are these agentic workflows that are guiding document admission, identity verification, KYC checks. And what it's doing, it's reducing the time to onboard from 5 days to, in some cases, under 48 hours with fewer drop-offs. So banks are saving hundreds of hours of manual case reviews. Those two right off the bat, we're seeing quite often across our clients doing it. I will say, caveats to watch. So the ROI takes time. If the data is messy and the processes aren't digitized and there's no executive sponsorship. So I want to call out. I also want to call out that agentic AI can drift or hallucinate too. So those safe guardrails and human loop are still critical. They haven't disappeared in this new agentic world. So my final thought on it, Jim, really is for banks, the question isn't what they can achieve in under 12 months. It's where and how they apply that AI. And the fastest wins come when the AI augments human work. It automates repetitive processes and it integrates seamlessly into the flow of the business.
It's really interesting because we are starting to see some use case. We're starting to see some successes. Daragh, the report mentions that 31% of mid-market banks are at some level comfortable using AI for decisions autonomously. Are these decisions, is this type of use of AI more on an operational back office performance basis? Or are we starting to see the same type of comfort level when it comes to customer experiences and customer facing experiences? What are you seeing from Microsoft, and how is this all changing in the financial services space?
Yeah, and just to build on what Jeromey is saying was, I think, the use cases that we have, things like contact center, developers, what we are seeing is improved accuracy as well in the responses that are being generated. I do see as well that this concept of being able to reach out and get a discrete answer to a question. So, what is a balance, or what's the insurance coverage for this claim? All those answers now are kind of getting really, really accurate. It's also getting cheaper to get better accuracy as well. But I think it's really exciting. What I am seeing is Gen AI is becoming more and more productionized. Yeah. It's moving out from inside the organization to out. So we have like a Dutch bank, ABN AMRO. They're serving 3.5 million customers now through Gen AI conversation. And again, they're able to translate to in real time across different languages. And again, Jeremy mentioned the guardrails. We've got great guardrails around that conversation. You can't jailbreak it with all the protections we have. And again, we build these protections with all of the co-pilots that we built. We build off all of the protections that are put in for ChatGPT. We're continually updating them, So I think the comfort level now about taking it out to your customer is getting stronger and stronger. And one of the patterns you can do there is build it internally first. That's what we did with Moody's. We built their knowledge base around their research data internally. Now you can click on their site, use their research assistant, and take it out to your customers. It's how we build software in Microsoft as well. We get what's called dog food versions of the products. They're not perfect, but we perfect them and then we roll them out to our customers.
Daragh, sticking with you, Microsoft tools like Copilot that you mentioned are mentioned specifically in the report from Avanade. And what I'm wondering is they said that 56% of mid-market banks have identified use case, which is really kind of exciting from my perspective when you're looking at, the whole world of Copilot is not that old. What are the most innovative ways that you're seeing banks leverage these Gen AI capabilities?
Yeah, I think the most exciting thing for me they're probably the right word might be unsexy use cases, So I do a ton of executive briefings with customers. I have to meet account teams, get prepped. I don't take a single note now anymore. I don't write down anything. Everything's recorded. I get it transcribed. I get it summarized. So straight away, that adds a ton of productivity and value to that conversation. I'm able to work with that account team really well. But yeah, we are seeing concrete numbers come back from our Copilot deployments. We're seeing, customers buying more of it as well. I think one thing that I think is really important too is that the tech itself doesn't get adopted. You need to roll it out in a programmatic way. And I think the organizations that are doing this very successfully are focusing a lot on the people impacts, so they're building in training programs, because any tech, I don't care what it is, if it's a Copilot, if it's SAP, if you just throw it over the fence, it won't get adopted. You need to teach people how to use it. And but yeah, we are seeing concrete improvements. Like even Investec, they're saving something like 200 hours per year with their investors. And again, for basic productivity, helping them get ready for meetings, in the meetings as well, and post-meeting follow-ups, generating meeting summaries, pushing those into CRM. All your kind of customer-facing roles are going to get immediate impact. And even in our own organizations, we see the sellers that are using AI are closing faster, getting better consumption from their customers. The customers are getting better value from the products they buy from us. So there's a flywheel here of value that's created as you start building up the use cases.
It's interesting, Jeremy. Not surprisingly, your report indicates that data security is a critical concern, with 51% of banks seeing it as a make or break issue. From Avanade's perspective, how are leading banks addressing security while advancing their AI innovation initiatives?
It's actually pretty interesting, Jim, because what we're seeing is that leading banks are starting to reframe security not as a barrier, but as a foundational enabler. And they're doing that by really rethinking how they approach security while advancing AI. And it's an evolving space. And I expect this next 2 years to continue to evolve. But some of the key things that I see happening, one is that we're adapting a secure by design AI framework. And what I really mean by that is really embedding security, privacy, and governance at the architectural level before deploying any agents or models. So for example, like we see our clients using Microsoft's responsible AI standards and Azure OpenAI content filtering, abuse monitoring, and fine-grained access control, right? To be able to get faster AI adoption without rework due to the late stage risk reviews. We're also seeing how banks are deploying model risk management and continuous monitoring. So they're approaching as treat every AI model or agent like a risk-bearing asset. So they establish a model risk kind of governance board that's jointly led by risk, security, IT teams. I see business leaders get involved in this now quite often. And I'm actually an advocate for bringing the business into those as well, because I think it's important to understand contextually how it's going to be applied within the business and how the intended uses are going to be. I also think this continuous monitoring for hallucination, data leakage, bias, using AI observability tools. That's another key piece we see in it. So the outcome from that really just enables this proactive issue detection before reputational regulatory exposure may actually happen, right? I think the last one I kind of would like to call out is like deploying generative and agentic AI in isolated tenant-controlled environments within Azure or a hybrid cloud. So no use of public-facing LLM APIs for sensitive data. So for example, our Microsoft clients are using Azure OpenAI with data residency guarantees. That's critical. As a CISO or somebody sitting in that seat, I want that guarantee, right? And we also very much focus on implementing zero trust architectures and endpoint monitoring across all the different AI pipelines, which there's going to be a lot of AI pipelines, especially with the citizen developer and some of the great capabilities that we see within like a Copilot Studio environment and these low code environments. Again, ultimately, Jim, the outcome being banks can train or fine tune those models on customer data without ever leaving their secure perimeter. So I think in the end, the best banks will treat AI and security as a co-designed partnership, not sequential functions. So you can't really bolt on trust at the end. You have to build it in right from the beginning, right at the very start.
Well, that's a great recommendation because, going alone or any of these elements, there's so many components to it that's very important. Your research also reveals that almost a quarter of mid-market banks, I think it's like 24%, don't know how they'll measure AI ROI. That's not totally surprising, having come from the banking world. And 49% are still in the planning stages. What measurement frameworks is Avanade recommending to clients to evaluate success?
It's such a tough question, honestly, too. Daragh and I just did an event yesterday where this came up from one of our clients and trying to ask, like, how do we do this? And again, I look at it in two ways. I look at it from ROI. I also look at it from a value framework, right? So value business case, what we're trying to do here. And so we have these things called hard values, right? So our financial ROI. So our Avanade framework that we put in place, it looks at things like cost reduction. So the simple things like reduction in manual labor, right? So we might be targeting 25% drop in average handle time in a contact center, as I referenced earlier. We're looking at revenue uplift, right? So increasing cross-sell, upsell, personalized AI campaigns that banks and financial institutions roll out. We look at capital efficiency. So how can we, again, go back to faster onboarding, faster lending decisions, quicker KYC turnaround? And then I think the final hard value financial ROI metric we look at is time to value. So delivery of business impact in under 3 to 6 months from pilot to deployment. Goes to what you got back to earlier about, is there real value? But where it gets a little bit, I think, squishier and where organizations struggle, and I do too at times, don't get me wrong, is operational ROI. So we're starting to look at things like productivity and efficiency, right? It's a little bit kind of harder to measure. So like, how do we really measure decision speed? So how can we say we want to get 50 or 40% faster underwriting decisions using AI-guided risk summaries? That's one of the things that we look at in underwriting case. We look at AI agent adoption rate. So percentage of employees using co-pilots or agents in their daily workflows to make them more efficient, more productive. Another thing we look at is integration efficiency, which I continue to see this will be, I think, something will evolve, is reduce IT backlog by using these low-code platforms like Copilot Studio, Power Platform for faster agent deployment. And I think the last one I'll kind of call out in our framework is really around data quality improvements. We can't forget about the data. So automated cleansing, enrichment of this customer data, fewer compliance gaps. So that one to get a little bit squishier. And I think the last one that we have in our framework is around strategic ROI. So think about trust, capability, and scalability. And when we look at that, we look at things like our AI governance maturity. So what is the number of models that we have full explainability, fairness, and auditability protocols around? How do you measure that with regards to ROI? But to me, that's a foundational metrics that reflect our AI maturity with regards to trust and future scalability. We do have a scalability index we look at. So percentage of this AI solutions reusable across business units. We need to rethink how we're building this stuff so we can have reusable assets. We want modular abilities. We want a flexible architecture. Again, one of the things Daragh and I were talking about yesterday with our clients. And then the last two I'll call is the AI literacy uplift. Number of users that are trained, certified, and onboarded into AI workflows. We have to put the effort in for our people so they understand it and they can effectively use it. And then lastly, it doesn't go away, human in the loop confidence. Just because it's autonomous doesn't mean we've moved away from human loop. So now we have this user trust score in AI recommendations or AI suggestions or agent suggestions. We actually build this into agents where it will prompt to get feedback. How is this working? How are we doing it? And we'll do it in a minimally intrusive way. So I'd say start with a few well-defined KPIs to tie the AI to the real business problem, like loan origination, could be customer service, measure the time saved, cost avoidance, and decisions improved. And I think we got to expand and include those strategic metrics like trust and adoption later. That goes to maturity.
Okay, Jeremy. So I'm a legacy banker, and more than half of the things you mentioned are not in the normal comfort zone of a traditional banker. They're not all metrics. They're not all in a quarterly time frame or an annual time frame even. When you look at this, some of them are based, such as the reward side of the equation, are based on future rewards, not immediate rewards.
Right.
As a person that goes into these financial institutions trying to sell these, I'm glad to see you both laughing because you know where I'm going with this. How hard is it to sell these new metrics? Because really, you can't ignore those metrics. They are the metrics of the future. But I'm going to ask you both this question because now you're up against this at every financial institution, as you are, Jeremy. How do you open the door to these brand new metrics that were no part of 9/10 of the executives your meetings past history? They didn't build their careers on these type of metrics, and they would really almost fight against the immediacy factor of what shareholders usually want.
Yeah, I'd love to kind of share my own experience here. So I think there's a couple of great things happening. So I think the first thing is CEOs are very excited about this tech.
Yes,
they always
that was to your advantage.
So at Davos, you'll see them all kind of go on and talk about it. I actually saw an interview with Jamie Dimon last week, and he said, "Don't overthink this. We did business cases. In most cases, it over delivered in the benefits. Some were lower, some were higher. So I sort of think of this as there is no decision to make here. The sooner you start doing it, the sooner your organization is going to build a muscle, the sooner you're going to be an AI powered bank, basically, and that's what Jamie was saying. He said there's nothing to think about. Like, it's not, you don't think about, do I need a driving license or should I do a tax return? I don't do a business case around that. I just know I have to do it, So now the thing you can do is there are scenarios where you can measure them very tightly. So, with developers, we did A/B testing. We gave one set of developers AI and the others not. And we did A/B testing in our own organization as well, where you sort of compare productivity across the two. The contact center is a place that's intensely measured. So we found that use case, as well as being a great use case, it was actually one that was very easy to measure. So we could measure containment, customer sentiment. And the really kind of weird the benefit that came out of these contact center projects was reduced contact center churn. About every bank I talk to is losing 30% of their contact center every couple of months. So having agents that are able to, human agents that are able to find the answers they need, their job satisfaction goes up. And actually, as more and more automation and self-service comes in, we're going to see contact centers that are just going to be selling products or advising customers. That's I think where the vision is going. But I actually don't. I see a sort of if I've got a customer that's saying to me, I need to do a business case for 6 months before I buy this. I kind of say, look, whatever you do now, it's going to be different. And 6 months is a long time in AI world as well. It's like dog years now, So I was at the NVIDIA conference last week, and they were talking about Gen AI like it was in the rear view mirror. It was legacy tech, So I sort of I actually don't. Maybe it's just the customers I'm meeting, but a lot of them now are kind of they just want to accelerate. They're sold on the value, and if they don't do it, what's going to happen is their employees are going to bring in their own consumer AI. And now you've got a situation where they're uploading documents outside the organization. So we saw that playbook before with mobile and shadow cloud. So, so, yeah, but you pressed the button there. Sorry, that's why I talked so long.
No, that's good. It's interesting. You use Jamie Dimon as your case study. I'm going, what really comes out of this, and it comes out of almost every podcast I'm doing today, is it's not the technology, it's the leadership. To be successful with any of this, implementation of any technology, deployment of any technology, acceptance in the marketplace of any technology, acceptance by your employees of any technology is more dependent on leadership than it is on anything. You could give me the best tools in the world, and I'm going to show how a legacy leader could screw it up, mainly because they've been so successful in the past. Jamie Dimon not only will step in places that most people won't step, but he also will admit mistakes that he makes along the way and realizes it doesn't cost him his job. I wish more leaders at any size organization would follow his lead as far as how to lead and to make his employees usually feel comfortable with this decision making, that their jobs are going to be secure. We won't get into the whole hybrid work environment discussion, but the reality is, I think, Jeremy, when you discuss the whole ROI situation, if the top leader buys into the metrics and buys into the concept of more of a resilience as opposed to an ROI on a numbers basis, you really have a good decision-making process there. And I think that becomes key. Daragh, the research showed that 55% of banks agreed that AI is accelerating both cloud adoption and legacy modernization. That all makes a lot of sense to me. But how does Microsoft see this technology-driven transformation differing from previous modernization efforts that you worked with in banking?
Yeah, I might have mentioned this on the last time I was talking to you, Jim, but I think the most amazing thing about this tech for me is how it's bringing people together across the business. So at the executive briefing center here in Redmond, I used to have, tech teams flying in on different planes to the business for the same briefing and then sitting in different rooms. We had to keep them separate. It was like when your parents get divorced, you have to meet one on a certain day, different to the other, So it's what I'm finding is it's bringing the business and tech together in ways I've never seen before, which is we never saw that with cloud. We never saw that with other, there was these were things that were tech heavy. And even with AI in the past as well, predictive AI was, the value of it was sort of in different parts of the business. Like fraud had their own models.
Yeah.
The customer team had next best action. With Gen AI, it sort of democratized it across the organization. It made, for once, you could actually break down the walls in the bank, making it easier to get answers to questions. I think that's what's really, really exciting and different. And the other thing is the pace of it is just so fast. Like it's in the last year we started having the tools for agents, and then we had reasoning models. And it's just happening so quickly. Like it's very hard to keep up. The only way I can do it is I have a YouTube subscription and I just listen to what's happening in that day as I do my job. I'm sort of trying to multitask and stay up to date. But even our own products are accelerating. When I joined Microsoft first, we brought out a big product every 4 years, and I had a year to learn it, 3 years to kind of get really good at it, and then we might have a little release in the middle that I sort of have to learn a bit about, but I was sort of able to learn at a much more leisurely pace. But now it's just like it's just so fast, And
it's interesting, Daragh, because at the same time that everything else around us is moving so quickly, it's the whole dynamic. And you said you start your day trying to learn what you can catch up on, because it's not a matter of learning about something new that nobody knows about. No, it's all catch up. And it is extraordinarily hard for me to even think about the fact that Gen AI is not 3 years old yet. It was November of 2022. And it's insane how much we've done, how much we're talking about, how much it envelops all of our lifespans. And, I'm now telling students, get as much as you can out of school. But if you think learning is done when you graduate, forget it, because whatever you're learning, and not to say that's not valuable, it's a foundation, whatever you're learning is going to be outdated within the first year, if not before, of you graduating. And really your success in the industry, your success in whatever you do is going to be based on how quickly you can learn prompting skills, how quickly you can learn how to ask questions as opposed to give answers. I'm sorry, but all of us are educated in the stars are the ones who could give the best answers. That's no longer the case. It's no longer even coding, because there's machines that can do that, but you've got to tell the machine how to do what you want it to perform. Jeremy, I want to get to you on that too, because you're out there, you're also seeing that transformation of mindsets within the organizations. You're also seeing it when you look at how is this transformation effort. We don't go back too far before we thought the digital transformation was a point in time as opposed to, no, you're still trying to catch up to a train that's moving faster than you are. How do you see that from the perspective of how you work with financial institutions to partner with them to move the needle forward for both of you? Because I know that, Daragh, we've talked about it before. Your clients are prompting you to do things differently as fast as you're prompting them to do things differently, because we're all learning together, and we're it's no longer the solution provider has the solutions, we have the questions. It's now the questions are going back, and it's more of a dialogue, very much like Gen AI is. What are you seeing out there, Jeremy?
Yeah, it's interesting in that when I'm talking to my clients, we know this is a journey, and those who are just trying to jump immediately to solve it tends to fall flat. So I think what we try to do, and in these conversations across the business, we take a step back to understand where we are from a maturity perspective within the organization, and people measure maturity in different ways. I look at it from the traditional elements of where's our data at, where's our technology at, where's our processes, and where are our people. Right? Let's keep it simple for this conversation. And then what we try to do is we look at that assessment. We also try to understand, where are you trying to aspirationally be? Because not every organization needs to be the most cutting edge AI organization that's fully agentic architecture, that is all event driven. So it's also level saying where we are, where we want to go. Now let's actually think through what it takes to get there, and not just from a tech. What is the training and upskilling we need? And I'm not just talking about the people we have to train on actually how to use the tools, but the talent we need to manage the infrastructure, to build the right data governance, to build the right data pipelines, the AI pipelines, do the ops components of LLMs. So I think what we try to do is make it more tangible. And Daragh talked a little bit earlier about iterative and smaller chunks. That's what needs to happen here. We need to have strategic roadmaps that actually lay out where we're trying to go, but build it in iterations where there's value tied to each iteration, and there's maturity gains at each one of those iterations. And that needs to be mapped back to our value conversation earlier. We shouldn't be doing nothing should show up on that roadmap if it doesn't add value some way or another. And it may just be technological infrastructure. We're going to invest in this capability now that has very low current return because of the investment, but where's no way we can get to these more advanced use cases downstream. Now's the time to embed this in. So I think you talk about the executives and talk about the metrics and things they're not used to seeing. This is why I feel AI, our conversations are changing. Daragh and I might have been talking more to technology, workforce in the past. We are in the room with the CFOs. We're in the rooms with the chief strategy officers. We're in the room with these cross-cutting governance committees that really are looking at this is going to fundamentally change how we do work and how our business functions. And so I think that is a critical group where we have to be embedded with them, help them lay that out in practical steps that we are tying investment to value and showing that growth over time. And I think that's where there could be a lot of value for these organizations and trying to think through how to progress that.
Jeremy, you said at the very beginning of this answer that, and we're hearing it more and more, if you don't know your true North Star, what you're looking to solve, you'll never know if you got there, and you certainly aren't going to be able to measure against it. And it may be a broad North Star, or it may be a project or program or product initiative. It may be a small part. It may be everything from a new account opening process to a completely new loan initiative, or it can be the entire organization. But we kid about the whole GPS system. If you don't know specifically where you're aiming to go, we can't work to make you get there, because we're kind of going to it's not about going north. It's about getting to that specific point. And there may be many of them, but again, makes your whole measurement conversation a lot stronger as well. I'm going to ask both of you now, Daragh, from your perspective, and it's probably changed since the last time we talked, what is the most exciting case study you've seen in financial services? You don't have to mention a company, but you can certainly mention something you go, that really worked well. Because, I can tell both of you get excited about those success stories you see out there. And they may be small, they may be large, but they're sometimes just fun to hear about. What have you seen out there?
Yeah, I've seen some amazing. I get excited about things that other people don't find amazing, by the way. So so
We
I
all
don't.
live our life that way. I hate to tell you, but that's beside. We're in banking. Remember, we're in the context of banking, which by its
Yeah.
own nature is something people are going like, whatever,
Yeah, I'm very excited by some of the conversations I'm having now with customers. Actually, with agentic, we're sort of looking at how we can move from one shot productivity to having the AI actually go off and do things, and go deeper. So one demo I'm doing with customers now is, with these reasoning models, they can break out these tasks. And again, what I've done is, tell me how to build. I want to build a new financial product. I'm a credit union in Canada. I wanted to help a young person plan for retirement or mortgages, and ChatGPT O1, what it does is it breaks it down into regulations, UX, core system, what kind of, it's just amazing. And it's a great way to learn how a financial product is built, actually, and then, but somebody
or
showed me,
should be built.
or should be built.
Because the reality is, we can't build them the way they were built before.
Yeah.
That's almost like moving from paper to PDFs, and you're going like, well, really, I don't want to do it with the same guardrails. Yeah.
I know, but somebody told me, it gave me this killer prompt, and it was, okay, now tell it you want the code to build this product self-contained in a browser, So it actually does it. It builds, it generates the code. You just copy it into, you rename it into the text file into HTML, open it, and actually it's a financial product. It can work out, what your repayments are going to be. It looks rubbish, by the way, but it's still, you go from ideating on a product to actually having some kind of MVP in a couple of seconds. I think that's one thing I'm doing recently. You can also do it with games. You can build self-contained Space Invader games. And I come from I grew up in the 80s, so I love those. But yeah, I think then the other space that is really interesting to me now is, how we take these processes and these agents and kind of, now we don't know how to build a core banking platform in Microsoft, or we don't know what a lending process is. I'm really excited about building these agents with my customers, helping them teach us, here's the compliance. And then at some point in the distant future, we will have to think about what would a mortgage advisor, persona-based agent look like. It will be a combination of these agents. How would you train them? So I sort of think of this as building blocks. If I join a bank tomorrow from college, I'm like GPT-4. I'm sort of generally trained. The bank would train me up on the procedures, how to sell. There might be some kind of compliance that I have to learn, and then scripts that I have to follow. And then I might do an exam to get certified in some way, So I see that happening with these agents. You're going to have to train them up, certify them. They won't be great on day one, but over time they will learn. Now that we're a bit away from that technology yet, but I sort of
and the ability to have consumers or even the financial institutions accept what the technology can do. What do you see, Jeremy, from a standpoint of like a fun case study that you have out there that says this is pretty cool how this worked out?
You know what? And again, maybe to Daragh's comment, some people won't think this is fun, but I actually think it's quite amazing given the group. We actually worked with a client on autonomous financial close agents. So it really is period end close and reconciliation assistance. So this is a manual process, error prone, time consuming process to be able to do this for mid-market enterprise banks or insurers, right? And so with the agentic AI value statement here, we had autonomous agents that could orchestrate, validate, and reconcile data across all these systems, really dramatically reducing close time, improving the accuracy, and freeing up finance teams. And so, we did that by honestly cobbling a series of 5 agents together, right? We had one focused on data ingestion. So an agent that pulls trial balances, subledger data, secure files from ERPs, Excel, databases, all that. We also had this reconciliation agent that really used the LM plus business rules to match entities that would flag mismaps, propose resolution paths. So again, this is the thinking of agents. This is where we're not just doing RPA here, where we're giving it predefined rules and you do A, B, C. We're giving it the ability to think, reason, and recursively solve problems. We also build an exception resolution agent, where it investigates root causes of these discrepancies by accessing anything from emails, prior journal entries, policies, draft remediation stages. And then we had a collaboration agent. This assigns all those unresolved items to different stakeholders, sends summaries to Teams channels, adds and tracks for SLA deadlines. So here again, are we tracking what's happening? Can we validate and quantify the savings that we have here? And then we had this narrative generative agent that basically drafts a period end financial narrative and reporting summary, pulling context. So we had this system of agents working together in an agentic infrastructure that allowed us to do things like time savings, close periods shortened by 30 to 50%, error reduction, fewer manual errors and missed reconciliations, right? We had FTE efficiency, controllers and analysts redeployed to strategic analysis and data versus data wrangling, right? We're not getting rid of anybody. We're actually giving people fun, new strategic initiatives, and they're growing in their journey. And then audit readiness. The entire Microsoft stack gave us full traceability of decisions, changes, approval workflows, and which allowed the scalability. So using things like Azure OpenAI with semantic kernel and Power Automate, we're then able to use like Microsoft Purview for observability and logging, right? And then all this was integrated within the Microsoft Copilot framework and Teams integration. So we had that human in the work loop validation. So to me, like the reason I get excited by this is because Copilot for finance is such a big topic with a lot of our clients right now, just in general. And it's a very intense process. It's a very important process, but done in the right way, really thought through, and each period and close is slightly different organization, but you can account for that by all these utility agents you're building that's custom to your business. I get excited because that's value. That's things that we can do. We can trace, we can pilot, we can run in parallel to manual processes. We can show that. And anytime we can show that kind of value, that's a huge win for me. And I'm going to take that to the bank all day long.
Yeah, it's interesting because, Jeremy, you're bringing up a lot of back office functions to give efficiency and effectiveness that bring in ROI, and that also financial institutions feel much more comfortable getting their arms around.
Right.
That whole risk avoidance mentality of a banker makes it very difficult to step out there with solutions to the marketplace that's directly impacting the consumer's way of doing banking, as in Dar's example of building new products or maybe a new way of structuring a relationship. My excitement level is also got a big question mark on it. I think the potential for agentic AI on behalf of taking over my financial services relationships in total from multiple organizations and to rebuild them in a way that makes it so my financial wellness gets better and my comfort level and trust goes up. I think it's a massive opportunity. There's two questions with that. Number one, which financial institution, if any, is going to be comfortable enough with the risk value of doing that? Now, I would have, Chime yesterday or a couple of days ago introduced a brand new credit product that was an automatic line of credit that was not going to be built on credit bureaus. I'm going, that's a stepping out product line that I'm going, I can't believe it's taken so long. But financial institutions would even have a hard time saying, well, our lowest value of a personal line of credit is $1,000, not $500 or not $100. And I'm going, but the value proposition is in that $100 to $500 where there's very little overall risk. The other element, my question mark will be, well, I get a product out there that's a third party product that I can buy directly that's going to do what a financial institution could do on my behalf, as opposed to me getting from my finance. Well, I find that solution out in the marketplace faster, almost like, Acorns solving my ongoing desire to put more and more money into a savings account on little pieces that I don't recognize to build something greater. I know there's financial institutions that do that out there, Banno and others, but the reality is there's certainly not enough of them. Who's going to solve that problem for me? Because I really, you would think, being in banking for so long, my wife thinks me being in banking for so long, I should have these answers how to bank better. I don't. I had my first savings account of any value about 10 years ago with Acorns, and because my son just graduated from college 4 years ago, it's the first time I haven't been in a cash flow mentality in a long time. But how do you build that? How do you build it not just for me, but for my wife, who banks and look at finances completely differently. And that gets into that whole prompting and interaction capability of Gen AI. It's extraordinarily exciting, but then you got to put it in the context of who's going to feel comfortable enough to offer it. And then also, who's going to feel comfortable from a consumer enough to do it. But we're getting most of our education from non-financial institutions already. It's exciting to think about what healthcare could do with this. When we look at AI, agentic AI, generative AI, contextual AI, well, all these dynamics, large learning models, the potential is far greater than the risk. It's just a matter of balancing it to each person's, desire and hoping that there's more Jamie Dimons out there. And I think, I don't know if your research went lower in the asset scale, Jeremy, but I think we're finding amazing case studies in the smaller financial institutions because they just have a different mindset. Their leaders are closer to the core customer. You don't have, in many cases, 20 years of banking that they build up successes that they're afraid to move out of that comfort zone. The mid-market is the hardest market, I think, to deal with. The biggest guys can buy themselves out of a problem. The smallest guys had the innovative culture and mentality. But it's fun to look at that. Gentlemen, we're going to do this again. I've been together with you before, and it is always a pleasure. Jeremy, it's great to meet you. And
thank you.
I know that Avanade is going to be at the Financial Brand Forum in a couple weeks. We're looking forward to seeing you there and looking forward to working with all you guys again. Thank you so much for being on the show today.
Thanks, Jim. Really appreciate it.
Thanks for listening to Banking Transformed, the winner of 3 international awards for podcast excellence. If you enjoy our work, please give us a positive review. Also, check out my recent articles on the financial brand and our fantastic research for the Digital Banking Report. This has been a production of Evergreen Podcast. A special thank you to our senior producer, Leah Hassage, audio engineer, Chris Fafalius, and video producer, Will Pritz. Finally, if you have not already done so, remember to subscribe to Banking Transformed on both your favorite podcast app and on YouTube for more thought-provoking discussions on the intersection of finance, technology, and leadership.